All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media. My name is Zach. Today, we'll be doing a live instant reaction to the Oregon Ducks win 69-3 over the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Um, Obviously, there was a lot of stuff leading up to the game, kind of some smack talk between Mike Gundy and Dan Lanning. And I think Dan Lanning proved that investing is the correct approach. I mean, Mike Gundy is just becoming a media circus at this point. He had a great run at Oklahoma State, but obviously they only won 3 games last year and couldn't win a conference game. He's had numerous kind of media scandals, and especially with this most recent one. And there were just several times, like for example, there were multiple times they didn't even have 11 guys on the field on a touchdown play, and then immediately followed up by a point after. So Mike Gundy's definitely at least on the hot seat in Stillwater. I would be surprised if he still has his job at the end of the year. I get he means a lot to that fan base, but he has certainly lost his touch, and I think the Cowboys need to go in a different direction. So I think kind of the first thing I'll do is I'll just kind of go through some of my notes that I took when I was watching the game. I'm going to pull up the chat just in case there's anything there. All right. Cool. So in the first quarter, I was really impressed by Jaden Kennedy, and honestly, just overall, I was really impressed with the secondary as a whole. I think Dylan Thieneman was proving he's everything that he was hyped up to be. I really liked Jaden Kennedy. He was flying around really. They played a lot of different guys in that kind of rover role, but I think Jaden Kennedy is that best as a nickel star rover. It's a term that's used interchangeably depending on the defense that you're in. But the other thing is that I think the secondary is way better than it was last year, or any year that Dan Lanning's been at Oregon. Dan Lanning's teams at Oregon have kind of, the secondary's been a little bit of a liability. There have been some impressive standouts, but as a whole, I always felt like the front seven was significantly better than the secondary. And while the front seven this year is still amazing and definitely one of the best in the country, I think the secondary is finally catching up. They have a lot of youth, so it'll be interesting to see how they do once they get into Big Ten play, and play against some other elite talent. But I mean, Ify Obadegwu, besides that one blown coverage on the big, I think it was a fourth down conversion, he's very impressive. He came back later in the game and had an amazing red zone. The wide receiver ran a fade route to the end zone, and he played it textbook perfectly. So really impressed with Ify Obadegwu so far this season. He's a hard hitter. He plays the pass incredibly well. Really impressed with Ify Obadegwu. What else was I impressed with in the first quarter? This team loves to run block. You can tell they're not just good at it, but you can tell that they welcome RQLY, go Ducks. You can tell that they take a lot of pride in it. I mean, everyone's seen the footage of Dante Moore in the first game, pancaking multiple different guys. But again, we saw it today in the CBS news coverage. They said the whole wide receiver motto of, if you don't block, you don't get the rock. And I think this wide receiver core, but also this team as a whole, just takes that personally. So really impressed with the run blocking of this team. I guess kind of the biggest red flag that we need to talk about is the procedure penalties. And you saw Dan Lanning get really upset on the sideline, and I'm kind of glad, because last year there were several times stuff like that happened, and I think he kind of let it slide a little bit too much. Those procedure penalties absolutely need to get cleaned up. I mean, in the fourth quarter, when they're up by 60 plus points, why are we still getting false starts? Like, why are you jumping off the ball early? That's the kind of stuff that if you're going to go deeper into the playoffs, you absolutely have to clean up. Like Dan Lanning said at the end of the first quarter, you can't shoot yourself in the foot. So that's kind of a big red flag that I really hope they clean up. Next week, I believe the game is at Northwestern, before the following week is Penn State. I also love the running back room. Maybe someone in the comments, can you guys let me know what's going on with Mekhi Hughes? He was brought in as the #1 transfer portal running back, and I have heard that he didn't do anything wrong, just the other guys are more impressive. Um, but the way that they're using him and his body language, I feel like there's something going on. Maybe someone in the that's been reading some what are they message boards. Maybe there's something I don't know. But the running back room as a whole is incredibly impressive. I mean, Noah Whittington on the second play from scrimmage, a 59-yard touchdown, and he just looks electric. Obviously, it takes more than a year to come back from an ACL injury. So while he was back last year, you're not really back from an injury like that. You kind of got to trust your legs again. So really impressed with Noah Whittington. He's so fast. He's so physical. Absolutely love to see him playing at this extremely high level. Obviously, Jaden Lamar is playing really well. Jay Harris, honestly forgot, but where has Naeem Offord been? Unsure if he's injured or what's up. He was playing on kickoff returns. I think, honestly, I just think the secondary is so deep. I don't know. I could see him getting a red shirt this year. Maybe someone in the comments can correct me. Maybe Dan Lanning has come out and said that he will be playing this year. But, I mean, they're so deep with Brandon Finney Jr., Ify Obadegwu, whenever Trey McNutt comes back, I think he has a role. And then you have the experienced guys, Dylan Thieneman. And then where's Theron Johnson? I guess that's kind of my question. Is he... I know he was out with an injury in the first game. I don't know if maybe they're just resting him. But I mean, as a whole, the second... Oh, and then you have Aaron Flowers, Kingston Lopa. Like, this secondary is incredibly deep. And... I know it's early, and I know they've played Montana State and Oklahoma State, but this secondary I genuinely think could be one of the best in the entire country. And it's honestly set up for years to come, which is so exciting. I mean, we saw numerous guys play that rover role at an elite level. Kingston Lopa can come up and lay the wood. Dylan Thieneman can come up and lay the boom. Absolutely love this secondary. And again, all these guys are so young. The CBS guys kept getting it wrong. They kept saying like all of them were true freshmen, which Aaron Flowers is a redshirt freshman, and there was another one that is a redshirt freshman. But still, very young, very talented, fly to the football, and very smart. And I think having Dylan Thieneman in that room, they're not over pursuing. They're just aggressive, and they're playing smart and aggressive. And also, they're just incredibly athletic. I mean, Ify Obadegwu is so long, like he is built to play that end zone fade route. Like, good luck getting that to work against him. We're very deep in a lot of positions. As long as we keep playing like as we did today, I feel like we may be able to win a natty this year, but who knows? I agree. I think that this team, at least on defense right now, is definitely better than last year's team. I know we lost a lot, like Jordan Birch and Derek Harmon, but I mean, Amari Washington so far, he's a different player than Derek Harmon, but he, in some aspects, is proving to be better than Derek Harmon. I think Derek Harmon is more of that stalwart kind of zero tech or one tech defensive tackle. And I don't know if that's Amari Washington's bag. I think he may be kind of a three tech, but he just flies off the ball, incredibly athletic, and they just do the little things. Like if they're not getting to the passer, they always get their hands up, and it's stuff like that is the difference between making the playoffs and making a deep playoff run. But like I said earlier, kind of the opposite of that is going to be those procedural penalties. The false starts, the illegal substitutions, stuff like that. But also our running back room is incredibly deep, and I think that's very intentional because they realize that I don't know if other college teams have realized that it's a 16-game season now. And obviously with NIL and the transfer portal, it's a lot harder to kind of have a deep roster because if someone's not the number one, or in a running back's case, probably 2 or 3, they're going to leave. And I think this team is really focused on the team and kind of more so than a lot of other teams. So I think that's why we're seeing a large rotation with what are they running? 5 guys? Lamar, Whittington, Harris, Jordan Davison, who they bring in goal line packages, and then Mekhi Hughes. So yeah, they have a 5 running back rotation right now. I can see that getting tightened up a little bit as we get into conference play, but who knows? I could also see them keeping it at 5. Obviously love the wide receivers. I think Chase McClellan is impressing, and again, he had a few amazing run blocks, and then he got the ball, they were able to manufacture some touches for him. But the other impressive thing about this team is that they are spreading the ball around like crazy. I didn't realize this. No wide receiver had more than 2 catches. Or no, I'm sorry. Gary Bryant Jr. had 3. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys with 2 catches, and then 3 guys with 1 catch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different guys had a catch on 18 receptions. That's amazing. That's something that every coach dreams about. I think Dan Lanning himself has taken another step forward. Like I said, he was kind of actually getting onto some players about the procedural penalties when I feel like last year when Oregon was playing lesser opponents, for lack of a better term, I feel like he would kind of let some of that stuff slide. And then there was another play, it was a touchdown, and Alex Harkey was off the ball. So the ball was way on the other side of the field, and Alex Harkey did something Dan Lanning didn't like. I didn't see it, so I don't know what it was. But Dan Lanning was coaching Alex Harkey after a touchdown, and that's the stuff that wins championships. So I'm really impressed with Dan Lanning this year. I think he really looked internally after the loss to Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and I'm really impressed with Dan Lanning. I'm really impressed with this team. I'm glad we didn't have another Idaho game from last year where we almost lost to an FCS team. They are clearly taking both of these opponents incredibly seriously. So yeah, I mean, great performance by the Ducks all around. Like my notes on the second quarter were the secondary has gone from a weakness to a strength. This is reminiscent of a lot of Georgia secondaries. I feel like the front 7 during Dan Lanning's tenure has always been very reminiscent of Georgia, and it's been way bigger than we traditionally see in West Coast football. But finally the secondary is catching up, and I'm getting very like no fly zone vibes. Absolutely love the secondary. They're amazing to watch. There were more procedural penalties that will drive you nuts, and like I said, we really got to clean that up. Dante Moore, his ball placement on that touchdown pass to Malik Benson was incredible. Like there's not a lot of guys that can have the ball placement that he did on that play. And in my comments, I've gotten a lot of notes about, oh, Dante Moore's washed, he looked horrible at UCLA. Okay, well, he was a true freshman starting with not nearly the amount of talent. And it's the little stuff that he does that is what makes him elite. Obviously, he's big. Obviously, he has a strong arm. Obviously, he has that ability to scramble. But he just places the ball where he allows his wide receivers to make a play. And in Will Stein's offense, where you have these quick screens out to wide receivers, and tight ends with Kenyon Sadiq and Jamari Johnson, the difference between that being a 3-yard gain and a 10-yard gain is timing, and he has a much stronger arm than Dylan Gabriel had, so he can get the ball out quicker. But it's also the placement of the ball, leading your receiver up the field versus having to turn around or, go to the ground to catch the ball. That's, again, it's a bunch of little things that are adding up that are why this team can go further into the playoffs and really contend, obviously not only for a Big Ten championship, but for a national title. And that's the difference between this year's team and last year's team. I think last year's team eventually got there. But I mean, Dylan Gabriel, love him to death, doesn't have the arm strength that Dante had. And I feel like just Dante's ball placement is a lot better. And like I said, this secondary is also way deeper than any of Dan Lanning's teams have been. Back to that wide receiver core motto, no block, no rock. That Dante Moore shot onto his knee at the end of the second quarter, I was kind of surprised Dante Moore came back at all in the third quarter, but I think that was to signify to Duck fans and to the entire country that he was fine. I never heard whether they confirmed whether he was shaken up due to a head injury or whether it was a knee/ankle thing, but showed incredible toughness, and I'm glad he seems to be okay. And he obviously got to rest a lot with Luke Moga coming in the second half, and then and then who was the third? Brock Thomas. I was obviously Tatum Tuioti is very impressive. but I was really impressed with just how sure of a tackler he was. So I believe it was I know it was definitely in the first half. I think it was in the first quarter. The Zay Flores was scrambling out of the pocket, and Tatum Tuioti got him on this ankle tackle. And that's so hard, like to bring a grown man down with just your hand on his ankle, like that's so tough. And he got him there. And then there was another example later on in the game where kind of similar, Zay Flores was scrambling out of the pocket, and Tatum Tuioti was able to just barely grab him by the hips and bring him to the ground. I'm really impressed with Tatum Tuioti so far. I think he's proving to be a little bit more. Um, he's proving to honestly be a little bit more talented than Matayo so far. I think overall Matayo is the better player, and I think maybe a lot of teams are just avoiding Matayo Uiagalelei. But Tatum Tuioti is an amazing player in his own right. I think so far he's proving to be more of a Nick Bosa kind of outside linebacker that is an elite pass rusher as well. That's kind of the vibes I'm getting from him. Let me know in the comments if you guys have a different comp for him. But especially when it was in the second half, he dropped back and almost broke up a pass. I was getting very Nick Bosa vibes from him. Love Tatum Tuioti, and I think Matayo Uiagalelei, as the season goes on, I think teams will kind of have to stop avoiding him and run to his side of the ball. Let's see what else. Like I said, Oklahoma State couldn't even get 11 guys on the field multiple times. That's a major red flag. And then obviously, man, I felt so bad for Oklahoma State when there were the 2 pick sixes over the course of 3 plays. I'm glad Jerry Mixon got the ball and got one of the pick sixes and tried to give the ball to his mom. I really hope they give him back the ball. Apparently, Jerry Mixon scored a pick six. Afterwards, he ran to the stands and gave the ball to his mom. And apparently, the equipment staff later came back to the stands and took the ball back from his mother. I know it's really hard to prep game balls, but I really hope his mom gets the ball back. Yeah, and so let's go over some stats. Noah Whittington with 91 yards rushing on 4 carries. Obviously, 59 yards will help boost up that average. Jaden Lamar had 87 yards. Mekhi Hughes had 30. I don't know what it is. His body language is just off. I feel like something happened, or I don't know if maybe that's just the body language, that whenever you're the top transfer portal running back and you're not getting starting touches, I don't know what it is. Maybe once conference play starts, maybe they'll start running Mekhi Hughes more. And the thing that I love about this Oregon running back room is that they are all good at a lot of different things. So obviously they're bringing in Jordan Davison in power formations, and that's what they're going to run. That's seemingly going to be the power back. Jaden Lamar, let me take a step back. All of these guys have the ability to go out to the edge on these kind of quick swing screens and whatnot, and make a guy miss or run a guy over or run and get a 10-yard gain. They all have the quickness, the power, the vision. So I totally understand why the Ducks coaching staff is kind of having to run this 5 running back system, because they're all fast, they're all strong, they all have great vision. Oh my gosh, and the block that Noah Whittington picked up on the blitz, where he just smacked the guy in the helmet, and the guy, he later chased Dante out of the pocket. But the guy had to fix his helmet. Like, that is textbook blitz pickup by Noah Whittington. Absolutely love Noah Whittington. I'm just reviewing some other stats from the game to see if there's anything else I want to talk about. The secondary is so deep. Peyton Woodyard ended up with 5 tackles. Will Stratton ended up with 4 tackles. But the defense is just so deep. We haven't even talked about Elijah Rushing in the front 7. Aaron Flowers, Ashton Porter had a great game as well, breaking up several passes at the line. Kingston Lopa did a great job of playing in that rover role and playing in the box and stopping the run. And I think the biggest difference is that we have always kind of had safeties who could play the run, but I don't think we had the corners where you could put them out on an island. And trust me, I don't want Ife Obadegwu out on an island against Jeremiah Smith. Granted, I don't want anyone out on an island against Jeremiah Smith. But against teams like Penn State, it's going to be incredibly useful that we have safeties that can play the run, and I think we have the corners now out on the edge that can kind of uh, handle their own, or they'll do fine out on their own out on the edge. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep playing this deep rotation. I think they will, just because that's the cloth that Dan Lanning is cut from. But so far, I don't see a weakness on this defense. Obviously, Devin Jackson and Bryce Betcher at the linebacker spot have a lot of experience, and I think they prove that. But then it's when you can have an extra guy in the box like Dylan Thieneman or Kingston Lopa or Jaden Kennedy. All these guys are elite at playing the run, and that's so helpful. So looking forward, oh, they have at Northwestern on the road, right? Yeah, at Northwestern on the road. Um, I'm not as worried about. People love to create this narrative that traveling multiple time zones is this big deal. I don't think so. You know, it's a 9 a.m. start Pacific time. I'm really not worried about it. Dan Lanning, he's an amazing coach, and he really focuses on making sure his teams are just as mentally prepared as they are physically prepared. So I'm not worried about that. I think it'll be an easy win. What are y'all's thoughts? Let me know in the comments. What were you guys impressed with? What did you guys see? What do you think is going to happen with Mekhi Hughes? What were you guys most impressed with? What were the biggest red flags? I mean, I'm just also reviewing more stats. The Ducks ended up with 631 total offensive yards, 319 passing, and 312 rushing. That's crazy because last week, what they ended up with 253 rushing and 253 passing. So very balanced offense. Obviously, that's very easy whenever you're going up against teams with not as much talent as the Ducks have. But I mean, Todd Grantham at Oklahoma State, he's the defensive coordinator. He's a great defensive coordinator. He's very aggressive. Obviously, he doesn't have the talent that he's used to having at places like Florida. But the Ducks only gave up 67 passing yards and 144 rushing yards. But the penalties was the biggest red flag. They had 6 penalties for 35 yards. That's a major red flag, and that really I can't stress enough how badly that needs to be cleaned up for the Ducks moving forward. The Ducks averaged 8.4 yards per rush. That's elite. That's over 2.5 times what the Cowboys averaged per rush. Does anyone know why they're bringing in Luke Moga as the backup instead of Novosad? Because Novosad's already been redshirted. So I'm really, I don't know if they're giving him last year Dante's treatment from last year, but Dante was also redshirted last year. I don't know if they're maybe trying to keep him as a secret weapon. Obviously, Luke Moga is incredibly impressive, but it's my understanding that Austin Novosad is very much QB2, if not QB1B. You know, like I thought that quarterback battle is pretty close. Obviously, Luke Moga is great and coming in clean up duty and being able to scramble. But as far as Luke Moga is definitely a better scrambler, but Austin Novosad's not a bad scrambler. So I'm a little curious if anyone knows maybe some from message boards or anything, or what do you guys think? Well, why do you guys think they're bringing in Luke Moga kind of in these cleanup duty situations versus Austin Novosad? And then the other thing that I think is a little interesting. Oh man, what's his name? One second. Is so they wide receiver uh, Kyler Casper. He's this big 6'6", 6'7" dude. I thought he would be a little bit more included in the offense. I don't know if that's kind of a smokescreen thing. If they're trying not to use him too much because they're saving some of those plays and some of maybe some red zone plays that target him. Maybe they're saving those for stiffer competition, for lack of a better term. But I thought Kyler Casper would be a little bit more included. He did not end up with a catch this game, and I believe he only had one target by Luke Moga, and I think that got negated by a hold by Oklahoma State. But I think I like that the touches are being spread around and it's not consistent from game to game and it's not consistent from quarter to quarter. Um, I like that they're incorporating Cooper Perry. Again, that may be just a redshirt situation later on. Um, but I mean, the wide receivers, I think so far have to be the standout group of the year for the Ducks, just because that was such a concern coming into the year, especially after losing Evan Stewart. But I mean, obviously, DeCorian Moore is proving to be everything he was hyped up to be, and I think honestly a little bit more. He is an elite track athlete, and he showed that on his touchdown run. I think Malik Benson is proving to be a great addition. Gary Bryant Jr., I'm glad, is finally getting a lot of touches and a lot of manufactured touches for the Ducks. I'm really excited to see what Jeremiah McClellan can do. That was another guy the CBS crew was saying was a true freshman, but he's a redshirt freshman. Um, and I mean, now that we've seen the Ducks play a couple of games, this wide receiver group goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If Kyler Casper gets included, 6 deep with Justice Lowe. That's great, especially when we have two great pass catching weapons at the at the tight end position, in Kenyon Sadiq and Jamari Johnson, as well as all the swing screens that Will Stein likes to incorporate, with the 5 deep stable at running back. So this offense that I think was obviously the biggest concern coming into the year, and that's going to be the biggest concern against teams like Penn State. That's going to be the biggest question mark. And so far, I think they're answering every question anyone from around the country had about this Oregon Ducks team. I think here in Oregon, I think a lot of people knew that this offense was going to be elite, but I think these first 2 games are proving that this offense, while against lesser competition, is elite. And Dante Moore is legit. He's made a lot of progress from starting those 5 games at UCLA 2 years ago. Um, I think this offense is incredibly impressive. I think this offensive line is one of the best in the entire country, and I think the offensive line is probably, to me, one of the most translatable things going from teams like Montana State and Oklahoma State and playing teams like Penn State and Ohio State later on in the year, assuming we get to the Big Ten championship. Just because they're creating massive holes. They're getting off the ball fast. They're incredibly big. They're incredibly strong. Like like I've said probably 5 times now in this live stream, they have got to clean up this procedural penalties, especially the ones that were driving me nuts, where the Kenyon Sadiq or another player wouldn't get set, and then Dante Moore either would start the motion or would snap the ball. Like, that's just wait another half second, like there was plenty of time in the play clock. I think the Kenyon Sadiq one may have been on him, but he also had to motion a guy to get off the line of scrimmage. So it's, which one do you want? Do you want him not getting set, or do you want a illegal formation penalty? Um, yeah. Other than that, I think that's really all my thoughts on the Ducks game. Obviously, really impressed, and I'm excited to watch the Northwestern game next week. Anyone have any questions or any thoughts in the comments before we go? Cool. All right, then with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, And make sure to like and subscribe. And I will see you guys next week after the Northwestern game. Bye.